Good morning. My name's Emily Koski, and I'm the chair of the Budget Committee. I'm going to call to order our regular committee meeting for Thursday, September 15th. I am joined today by Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Chavez, Councilmember Chugtai, Councilmember Rainville, and Councilmember Vita. Today, we will continue hearing presentations from the city departments on the mayor's 2023 and 2024 recommended budgets. On the agenda today is the Office of Community Safety, 911, the Fire Department, and the Office of Emergency Management. Our first presentation today is from our new Office of Community Safety. I've allocated up to 30 minutes for this presentation and the corresponding Q&A, after which we will move on to the second presentation. I'll note for council members and for the public, the scope of the department presentation for the Office of Community Safety is limited to the budget and new spending proposals for the Office of Community Safety. The department presentation will not cover the budget nor the new spending proposals for the departments they oversee, as each of those departments have their own presentations. I will recognize the Commissioner of Community Safety, Dr. Cedric Alexander, to give his department presentation. Commissioner Alexander.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Koski. I really do appreciate the opportunity to be here before you all today to provide a brief presentation and, of course, to try to answer any questions that you may have as well. As you well know, the Office of Community Safety in this presentation, this is for the 2023-2024 Mayor's recommended budget. And also, as you know, I began this work officially back on August 8th, and I'm actually 6 days into my second month here on the job. And as we have continued to, and as I have continued, quite frankly, to deepen my appreciation of this great city here in Minneapolis, but equally as important also to have engaged and met the hundreds of people and 100 of employees that make up the 5 departments in which I am wholly responsible for. So today the focus is going to be on the Administrative Department of Community Safety, and so we'll move on to slide 2 here. Our vision and goal continues to be consistent in terms of what direction was given to me by the mayor prior to taking this job. And as we bring these 5 departments together, continue to build on the collaboration of each one of these departments, more and more, quite frankly, each week I've realized the importance of this office and also the importance of having all 5 of those departments, both police, fire, 911, emergency management, and Office of Violence Prevention, which is also known as the Office of Neighborhood Safety, to bring those 5 entities together to work collaboratively with each other over the last several weeks have proven to be substantially important to the future of public safety in this community, and even been evidenced by us in the current state of where we are today. So that is a great benefit to us. We certainly can see it, we recognize it, and the goals and visions in which we all have encompassed, we begin to think about that encompasses these 5 departments, truly is coming to fruition each and every day on this job. The next slide, our organizational chart reflects the work of all the 5 departments and how they exist and how they collaborate together. And I want to ensure everyone, as you may be aware, and I need to repeat this, the Office of the Neighborhood Safety also include the current Office of Violence Prevention and other alternate safety measures. On slide 4, the department exists through the executive order that we all are very much aware of and is proposed as part of the 2023 and 2024 budget. Slide 5, our change allows me to hire a chief of staff to manage the operation of this office. And even though a chief of staff has not been hired to date, as we continue to stand up and learn more about ourselves and being very strategic and very patient with ourselves and making sure whoever is chosen as a chief of staff is going to be one that's going to be a good fit for this new office, and one as well that we have the ability to engage, work with all these various department heads, and also have the ability to work with this council as well. On slide 6, as you see, our staffing summary consists of 6 FTEs. This includes myself and 5 others. Office roles will exist around operations, communication, and administration. As to being a little over 1 month into this role, as shared last week at the study session, I will continue to assess our proposed budget and structure within it. And lastly, as you may be aware, I, as well as my team, always available, of course, to answer any questions that you may have as we continue to evolve into this new office. Because here again, we certainly see the importance of it, and recognizably so. I think even the community at large, a number of community meetings I've attended over the last number of weeks also are beginning to recognize the benefit of this office and how it plays in overall public safety in this community. And as we continue to move into the 21st century, things are not going to become easier, they're going to become more complicated, and particularly around public safety. And in order to be able to maintain a level of public safety in which this community and you as representatives of council members of this community, in which I think we all can feel very proud of. So with that, I'll conclude there, and should you have any questions, I will do my very, very best to answer those questions along with budget representation, which is here, Office of Budget Representation that is here.
Thank you, Commissioner Alexander. I just want to note for the record that we've been joined by Council President Jenkins, Councilmember Payne, and Councilmember Osmond. So our Commissioner of Community Safety will now stand for questions to ensure that all council members have the opportunity to participate in the Q&A. Council members may put themselves in queue to ask one question at a time, after which we will move on to the next that's in queue. Council members may put themselves back into queue to ask another question if you desire. As a reminder, all questions should be within the scope of this presentation. Please reserve questions about the departments this office oversees for those department presentations. And I see we have Councilmember Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so my question is around our FTEs for this department, and knowing that one of the largest tasks is around integration across the various components that make up our community safety program. Do you envision that integration work happening as staff within the Office of Community Safety, or do you envision it happening as liaisons within each of those reporting departments?
You know, what's going to be, and that's a great question, Councilmember Payne. I think as we continue to evolve and find out a little bit more about who we are and how we know who we are, but how we continue to evolve and where we're starting from, I think we have to be very slow, very methodical, and very thoughtful. Because to your question, we know right now what we need to stand up, right? And even in the event, we have to find a chief of staff that will become very much a part of the chemistry of the making of this office. But in addition to that, as we continue to grow and evolve, it will be important for me to assess what other entities, both internally and externally, to your question, may be helpful for us to continue to grow and to, more importantly, be in contact and connect with those communities oftentimes that have gone not being connected to. And I think that's hugely important, because when I think about public safety, and if you remember, Councilmember Chavez, from your meeting last night, is one thing that I made very clear is that public safety are these 5 entities, but public safety is also many other things as well, such as meeting with people and connecting with people and providing services to people who have mental health conditions, homelessness, people who have lack of insurance and the ability to provide themselves with proper health care, lead poisoning, poor schools, you name it. All of these things affect a larger community, which affects our public safety. So I think we have to be sensitive to those other possibilities that are out there that we have to connect with. And as we grow, as we can stand up and grow, certainly without question, it becomes important that we connect with those other entities and what other resources or personnel we need to bring in order to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, thank you for your presentation. My question is this budget large enough to staff your office? Do you have all the resources you need for 23 and 24?
Well, that's a tough question. My initial response, of course, probably as anybody's response would be, is I'll take as much money as I can get. But in a very serious manner, I think we're okay in terms of what we're starting with. Because here again, what I want to make sure that we do is that as we grow, we're doing it in a systematic kind of way. We don't want to underfund ourselves, but at the same time, we want to be good stewards of the public's, taxpayers' money. And we want to do it in a way in providing the very best public safety that we can. So to your question, I think for the moment we're fine from all indications, but certainly as we continue to grow, the funding we will need certainly will grow, and any support, of course, from this council will be hugely and wholly appreciated. Yes.
Thank you. I see Councilmember Johnson is in queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this budget certainly makes sense to me that you'd have this team that you can rely on and trust, a small team, but also a cohesive team that can really help you with management of all of these different departments and those integration aspects. And I appreciate Councilmember Rainville's question as well. I think it's something on my mind that we're going to have to think about being flexible, maybe even intra-year as necessary to allow you to scale up as the needs arise, because I think that could happen fairly quickly. And so I would like to reserve that flexibility as well for you as the need arises. And then I'll ask our chair, and I'll also ask you, Commissioner, if you'll entertain this question, because it's not specific on the budget, but now that you're a little more than a month in, I'm just curious how things are going and any reflections that you might have for us. So I'll first see if that's okay with the chair, if we ask that.
Sure, a quick reflection is perfectly fine.
Yes,
If you're
well,
willing, Commissioner.
No, things are going well. And of course, just like in any organization, you got to find your way around. You get to know people over time. You do it a little bit at a time. And having the opportunity to go out in the community to meet a number of people, such as the event Councilmember Chavez put on last night, which was a great event, well attended, had an opportunity. There were some very tense moments, but there were also some moments of opportunity, and that's part of it for all of us that was there representing the city. But my relationships, even with members on this council, have grown over the last few weeks. And to have an opportunity to work with the men and women who make up the 5 departments of the Office of Community Safety has been very rewarding as well. And I think those, as we move through, because I'm not just learning this community in terms of how to get from point A to point B, which I'm still doing, but it's also learning the personalities, the strengths, the weaknesses of people that are around you that help support what it is that you're trying to do. And as we take on additional employees, as we work closer together, we all learn more about each other. But more importantly, we learn what strengths do we bring to public safety that's going to benefit this community at large. Because everything that people are talking about at this very moment in this city is about public safety. That's everybody's primary conversation any and everywhere you go. So for us to stand up with a sense of confidence, for us to stand up with integrity, for us to stand up with an opportunity for people to look to our office as a place in which they can trust and grab hold to is very important to me on a whole lot of different levels. Having been a former lawman myself most of my life, I understand the importance of policing, but also a clinical psychologist part of me also understand the importance, going right to the question in which Councilmember Payne just asked, how do we reach out beyond where we are to those spaces where people need support that also impact public safety. So, so it's been a great experience. It certainly has its ups and downs, and we still have a lot of work to do in terms of building our office. But this is a journey that will always be a part of our memories and our experiences as time goes on. And the things that we cry about right now, hopefully we can laugh about later. And some of the same things that make us laugh someday also make us cry. But that's part of the experience in life, and this is a part of that. And being in this community at this particular time in the history of this city and this country is hugely important, I think, for all of us to be able, particularly for me, to be able to show the rest of this community and this country what it is we're able to do when we're coming out of a situation trying to move to a much better place. And we're going to get there. And that was the only reason, you've heard me say this before, that was the only reason I come here, to be part of that. So thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Now we have Councilmember Vita.
Thank you, Chair Koski. Thank you, Commissioner. I just had a quick question about physical space. So I know that you're growing your team, and I've been down to your office/table, conference table that you have down there. So I'm wondering, what is the plan? You have, 5 FTEs, you have Becky, you're going to have a chief of staff. Have you been in conversations with departments to make sure that your team has a physical space to be office that is comfortable and, helps them with their day-to-day work?
Yes, ma'am. So, how I kind of describe my office right now, of course, we exist under executive order. We're kind of like in the basement, if you will. We are there, but we're kind of like a CIA operation. We exist, but we really don't exist kind of thing, right? But reality of it is this. This is what's important to me. I've said from day one, when it came to space, I really don't care where I am. You can put me in a broom closet right now because there's a larger mission that's out there. So we have this space down in room 115. Anybody's welcome to come by. We need a paint job down there. We need more office furniture, but we'll get to that over time. The most important thing to me, all 5 of my department heads have their own office. They've been in their spaces. That's their personal and professional space. They're taken care of. Becky, of course, who just joined me, she understands where we are. We operate from a long table. That's kind of the command center for us, if you will. We have a couple of offices in the back, but we still got to do work to them, and we will get there. And I certainly do appreciate the observation in you raising that question, Councilmember Vita. But for us, quite frankly, the mission is the most important thing from us. And when I said, if me and Becky got to work out of a broom closet, that's what we'll do, because we're getting it done every day. We're doing a number of things out in the community to fight crime. We're doing a number of things across all of our platforms to engage and try to think about how we do things better. We got 5 people who are now talking to each other. They're generating energy with each other. We're talking about a plan for civil unrest that we're working to pull in place very aggressively. And just had these recent conversations yesterday with Barrett Lane. And so a lot of conversations that had not been taking place, Councilmember Vita, in the past, takes place right there at that long table. So we're getting there. At some point, we'll have pictures on the wall, and we'll even have a sign outside that says Office of Community Safety, because right now it says nothing, but everybody knows that's where we are. So I appreciate that question, and thank you for your kindness in asking that.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions, so thank you so much, Commissioner Alexander, for your presentation. We appreciate, especially this being your first time. Well done. So
Thank you very
so much.
Thank you all very much. Yes, ma'am.
Before we continue, I just want to recognize that Council Vice President Palmisano has also joined us today. Our second presentation is from 911. I've allocated up to 45 minutes for this presentation and Q&A. I'll invite Director Joni Hodney to give their presentation. Welcome, Director Hodney.
Good morning, council members, and thank you. All right, as she said, I am Joni Hodney. I'm the Director of Minneapolis Emergency Communications Center, often referred to as MECC, so if you hear me use that acronym, that is what I'm referring to. The mission and overview of Minneapolis 911 is to provide the critical link between public safety and responders and the communities that we serve in the city of Minneapolis. We're a dedicated team that strives to collect and disseminate all requests for service in an efficient, courteous, and compassionate manner. These actions help save lives, protect property, and assist the public in their time of need, and we make the decisions that make a difference. MECC dispatchers and call takers provide emergency communication services to community members and those visiting the city of Minneapolis, a direct link to first responders during their emergent need. Dispatchers and call takers also help community members who call 911 by providing a caring, calm, and reassuring voice that the police, fire, and EMS are on their way at their time of need. We also work in conjunction with 311 on the non-emergency calls when 311 is not in service. MECC works in full support of the City of Minneapolis Racial Inequity Impact Analysis. Each call is handled with the utmost care to determine the best emergency response or support referral that is served possible. With this added opportunity of growth by looking at embedding a social worker and continued work with the Behavioral Crisis Unit, this is going to allow us the opportunity to provide not only more growth for the most vulnerable members of our community, but also as improved efforts for the care of the 911 staff. Our budgeted FTEs for the department in 2022 all the way through 2024 is 85 full-time employees. 2022's budget of $10.2 million is covering the expenses in 2022 and only moving into the needed requirements for increased salary in 2023 and 2024. With the current difficulties in hiring, we're still working with staffing shortage of 29 throughout the department. 2 of those are in our administration, 3 in supervisory, and with the most recent class that started earlier this month, we are still 24 call takers and dispatchers short. We do have 2 more that are scheduled to start on September 26th. For 2023 and 2024, we're only requesting the normal budgetary expense increases. Until we become fully staffed, it's difficult to determine and assess any other positions or additional needs that might be for the department. Our current organizational structure is showed as follows. With the support of the mayor and council in 2022, we were able to reinstate the assistant director position and repurpose one of our supervisor positions to a night operations manager. This gave us a succession plan at every level and helped stabilize operations, providing additional support to staff day and night. One of the most exciting changes we've made during 2022 was the returning of a 2-tier dispatch center. This allowed another opportunity for promotion and also gives a time for us to perfect more training with our call takers before they have the opportunity to promote to be a dispatcher. Both positions have equally important work, but using a different skill set. The tremendous amount of stress that MECC employees have gone through reporting to the center each day during the pandemic and since the large civil disturbances starting in the spring of 2020 has taken what is already a stressful job and made it more stressful. Their wages were falling behind due to contract negotiations taking time to settle. All of these items combined have elevated the increased turnover we have experienced in the dispatch center over the past year. Currently, a job classification study is being done and should be completed shortly, taking into account the work call takers and dispatchers perform and comparable market data. The additional strain put on MEC staff to pick up the additional hours of coverage has been taxing. The retention and hiring bonus should help stabilize the current staffing, and since offering it, we have seen an increase in applications already received. Most recently, we have started a continuous job posting to allow us to start a class of trainees every 60 days. We're working with human resources and backgrounds to get these vacancies filled as quickly as possible and are facilitating improvements in completing our background checks. Our first goal in our performance framework that we worked on with the OPI group is the average time that it takes us to answer a call. The national average for call answer times, according to NINA standards, is 95% of the calls answered in 15 seconds or less. MECC call takers and dispatchers handle more than 580,000 calls for service a year. We're still averaging the national call answer time of 15 seconds. However, with the staffing shortage, we're closer to the 15-second range instead of the below 10 seconds that we prefer to maintain as an internal benchmark. The 15-second call answer time is driven up by the number of people that disconnected before the call is answered, often creating another call into 911 or the longer process of call takers needing to call back and find out if those calls were accidental or a need for service. Staffing is not the only resolution we're looking at for providing a higher level of service. Currently, we're in the process of evaluating a call answer system that works directly with alarm companies to enter their business calls for service in an automated manner. This will save call takers approximately 30,000 to 35,000 calls a year that they would normally answer. In addition, we're working with the IT department to add an automated system that will help with callbacks, which allows when a person hangs up for the automated system to call back and give them the option of letting us know automatically if it was an accidental dial from a phone in their pocket. Our second performance framework is to keep the public informed about 911 through community outreach and city communications at our website. Since the commissioner has started, this has become a very high priority for him for us to get out into the community. During the pandemic and over the last couple of years, we hadn't had the opportunity to meet the public directly. We have now been able to go out into the community to several community events and be able to reach out to them, do some recruiting, and talk with the public directly. We're happy to be able to reach out to them again, join the in-person community events, and the job fairs. We have developed knowledge and recruitment video using our own staff to share the word of what it's like to be a 911 dispatcher or call taker. This video will serve as community education as well as part of our recruitment to bring in new talent to the center. Over the past few weeks, we've been able to take part in several community events, talking with residents in the area. This recruitment effort is new, so we don't know the full impact of the efforts yet, but we have had some great conversations with those living in neighborhoods, answered questions, and invited many people to join our team. Over the last couple of days, I've seen an increase in applications by 60 applications in one day. And goal 3 is for 911 dispatchers and call takers to provide the highest standard of customer service. January of this year, we hired an experienced training and quality assurance manager. The new training and quality assurance manager will oversee the further development of our quality assurance program by integrating internal education, streamlining the process, and developing better statistical information to ensure we continue to improve upon our current average of 92% of quality assurance scores. Since joining us in January, he's already brought forth software and programs that help us efficiently perform our evaluations and work. What are our programs? Majority of our budget expenses go towards personnel and salaries. In summary, we're not requesting any additional funding and do not have any change items to request at this time. Until we are fully staffed and able to better project what our FTE needs will be in the future, we are only adding to our budget and increasing the expenses due to normal inflationary increases with personnel, self-insurance premiums, and an increased rent due to our new backup center. Our partnerships with other departments don't need any additional expenses to us when we work with the police department, the fire department, and EMS. Their staffing levels do not adjust what our need is to complete the job. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Director Hodney. Yes, I see Councilmember Johnson has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you go back to the organizational chart slide for a moment.
Absolutely.
Thank you. At the bottom on the left side, it says 911 call takers. It says 10 FTE out of 24 vacant. Am I to understand that we currently have 10 FTE out of a total of 34 positions for
For
911?
call takers, correct. Dispatchers, we have 35. So total down there working dispatch and call taking, at the moment, we have 45. We should be having 69.
Gotcha. And clearly you have those divided between roles, 911 dispatcher, 911 call taker. Are they interchangeable right now? I agree, because I'm looking at this going, 911 call takers, we are at a third of our capacity that we want to have. So I guess the question is, are dispatchers also taking calls?
That's correct. When we made the change in the job classifications this year, everyone down there prior to 2022 was classified as a dispatcher. What that required of them is that in 18 months, they needed to learn all 5 positions that function down there in the department. This was in effect for about 4, maybe 5 years, and what we discovered over that time, at the beginning of the year, we went back and divided it to dispatchers and call takers. A few of the people that were dispatchers went back to call taking, and all of the new people that we're hiring now are in the call taking role. They need to do that call taking role for 2 years before promoting to be a dispatcher, which means anybody that is a dispatcher can then go over and work the phones. So currently, right now, of those 35 FTEs for the dispatchers, they sometimes might work a radio channel and sometimes they might answer phone calls.
That makes a lot of sense, and I really appreciate that. So really the 911 call takers, new role, new position, and so that's why we're really seeing all of the vacancies really in that role, because that's the intake then to ultimately get to dispatcher.
That's correct.
All right, thank you for the clarity. I appreciate it.
I see Councilmember Osmond.
Thank you, Doctor, and thank you for really coming to the community and sharing 911 and what you guys do, and also the event we hosted. We had over 10 applicants on specifically just 911 that wanted to join, and these people bring diversity, language, and so many things. So I would just encourage all the departments to get out the offices and come to the community when it comes to recruitment and trying to increase their staff capacity. Thank you, and it's great to hear that 60% applicants are up for 911. So it's amazing work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Osmond. It has been a wonderful experience. I have met some fantastic potential applicants out there and having the opportunity to talk to them face to face.
I see Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Hodney, could you speak a little bit about some of the ways that you work to help our dispatchers, our call takers manage a very trauma-filled career? Right? I don't ever want to ignore them in the first responder equation. Many of us have been on ride-alongs with EMS, and we know firsthand the kinds of things and the difficult positions that your 911 call takers are in. So could you speak a little bit to the different kinds of ways that you do peer support and wellness kinds of programs hopefully in a way that differentiates us as an employer.
Absolutely. We can always do better with helping to relieve the stress down there. What we are doing right now is we have, if you take an extremely difficult call, an individual takes a difficult call or dispatches a difficult call, we have peer support groups down there that are able to leave the floor with you and spend some time talking with you. Supervisors and managers are also always available. We had a bad incident not too long ago, and after it was done, we had that call taker go home to take care of herself. So we are very aware and keep a close eye. Our supervisors that work on the floor every day keep a close eye on how staff is doing. If we have a larger event, we're usually participating in a debriefing with the police department or fire department. For example, building fires are it can have some extreme consequences if we lose multiple people, and we'll get the dispatchers out there with them to do a debriefing on it. The final piece that we have is if we have an event that's just affecting dispatch, excuse me, we can call in a crisis support person from another dispatch center. Rarely do they ever do it in their own dispatch center. So we have one at ours that's a specialist at our dispatch center. And that's to allow them to have the freedom to talk without feeling like they're looking weak in the eyes of their coworkers, which is tends to be the thought process, much like police officers, 911 dispatchers think they can handle it all. As we continue these talks about bringing in a social worker to work with the community for mental health crisis, we're also discussing the fact that we would like that person to be available to our staff as well. We also make sure that they have the city resources for the EAP program. One of the members from the EAP program comes in every 3 months and meets with our peer support staff to help give them support and teach them how to better support the people around them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question actually to that. I'm wondering, Director Hodney, what is the timing for the hiring of the social worker, or is that already in motion?
So we've had our first conversations with the OPI group on this, the same group of people that we worked with to hire the BCR team. We have not completed all of the data that we need for that. Some of the things we're trying to determine is, will this person come from the same company, from Canopy, that we're already currently using? Or would we be better served having someone from another service to be able to do this? And what exactly are they going to handle? Will they be trained as a call taker first so they can actually answer the call? Or will they be there in support of a call taker on a call, or able to take over at the point that it's determined it's a mental health crisis? So some of those details are still being worked out.
Great, thank you. And we have another question from Councilmember Vita.
Thank you, Chair Koski. Thank you for the presentation. You know, I've been down there a lot. I've talked to lots of 911 dispatchers, operators, and Vice President Palmisano's question is a good one, but I guess my question to that question is, are people using those services? And is there any way to track that people are actually using it? Because conversations I've had, with most of the operators, they feel defeated, they're tired, they feel overworked. So are they using those services? Is there someone tracking, that this person has actually used it and has had an opportunity or time in their schedule, to use the services you're providing down there for them?
Thank you for your question. We do let everyone know on a regular basis the services are available. If we bring someone in that's going to be up in one of the conference rooms, we make an announcement to everybody that someone is there for them to speak to. For confidentiality reasons, we do not track who the individual people are that are using those services, whether it be our own counselor that we bring in or the EAP services.
Okay, so we don't really know even if you're providing it, if people feel comfortable using it.
I only know through conversation.
Okay.
I do know that there are staff members that have freely talked to me saying that they are using those services. Some of them have found that the EAP didn't work well for them to do counseling, but they have been referred to getting their own counselor. I think I've heard about more people currently that are seeing their own counselor than I've ever heard of down there in my career. I've been there for 14 years.
And then what about overtime? You and I have had previous conversations about lots of overtime and staff feeling overworked. Is that starting to lighten up a little bit?
The 3 employees we have in class right now and the 2 that we bring in at the end of September will actually not start taking their own calls without a coach for about 60 days. So it's going to take time before they start to feel that relief from any of these recruiting efforts. It takes a total of about 3 months for us to get people trained. So with the weather changing, with the winter that comes upon us, our call volume does drop. Right now, we do about 1,800 calls a day. Our call volume would drop down to roughly 1,400 to 1,600 during the winter months. That will ease up on the number of people that we have, but until we get staff in there, the best that we're able to do to assist them in filling in is all of the management team goes down there and takes calls and fills in where they can. Other people are volunteering to take the time. Staffing's really going to be the key to that.
Thank you. And I do appreciate, our first conversation, there was like this long period of time to get someone hired. I love that you've made it so that, the background checks and everything is shortened. So we have a few extra weeks that have been taken off so that people get in sooner, because that, in talking to people who applied, the time that it takes for them to actually get hired is what makes them move on to a different job. So I appreciate you shortening that time by a few weeks. That I think is really good. And then also the ongoing hiring. I think that is huge, that like there's always a position open. I've even seen ads for the positions. I've seen them in different places where 911 is hiring here at the city. So that's good. I appreciate those efforts because I really do think it's going to make a difference in the number of people that we get. We've talked about how you hire a large group, but that's not who you end up with, right? Like people they start and then they're like, this isn't for me. So then we got to start all over again with this kind of 12-week, this almost 4-month period before this person is actually in this call taker position. So thank you for the work that you have been doing. And then my last question, we had a presentation from BCR yesterday, and they were talking about the criteria for when 911 dispatches a call to them. Do you all have like a script, or like how do you determine? They had like things like there's no violence or there's no weapons or something. I don't have the paper in front of me, but they had a criteria for how a BCR agent would be sent on a call. Like, how do you train your 911 call takers and dispatchers to determine, like, this is fine, you don't need a police officer, you don't need fire, the BCR person should be on this call?
Thank you. I'm going to start with the first part of your comment there. Thank you for appreciating what the work has been. I really want to thank all of our HR partners and backgrounds that have been working with us to help streamline this process. And we are also taking a look at our testing, our critical testing that we're doing at the beginning to get applicants in, changing that a little bit to make sure that they're able to pass the test. One of the things that I discovered was that test had not been evaluated for some time, and I distributed it amongst several employees as well as their teenage children, since the requirement is a high school diploma, and also people who have English as a second language, and discovered that there were some flaws in that test, that we were losing some candidates that could have potentially been good candidates. So we are working on, we've finished revising that test so that hopefully I will have some statistics to see some improvement in the initial hiring. As far as BCR goes, since I became involved in 2019 with their program, and we worked together with the BCR team to help determine, and as well as with Deputy Chief Fors as part of the work group team that we had and our own staff. We went through and analyzed what type of person in crisis calls do we get, what type of check wall calls do we get, and when can we safely send an unarmed public safety person out there. Together as a group, and we met multiple times before we ever launched the BCR program, we determined the criteria that would keep the responders safe. It was added, we use what's called a problem nature code down there to determine how a call is sent out. We added some problem nature codes for the BCR team. Within those problem nature codes is the specific criteria that a call taker needs to ask when they're talking to someone on the phone. That's what they have to do with every call that they put in. We have about 200 problem nature codes that they memorize how to question someone and get the coding to the proper way.
Okay, we'll talk.
Okay.
I understand that part. I guess it's just, so like, I get the problem, the codes, but like if I'm calling and I'm in crisis and, I mean, there are these I may not bring up that I have a weapon, but I have one. Or the person who's calling may not see a knife, but they're calling saying that there's, you know what I mean, like something
Right.
happening there. I'm just trying to figure out how it's determined to send the BCR person and not the police or not the ambulance. Like, I get the code part of it, but like what parts of you're on the phone with a human being who is like saying something in it.
So we ask if they have a weapon. We ask if the person that's calling in, if they're calling about someone else, if they see a weapon. Part of what we did last year in conjunction with OPI Group is sent all of our dispatchers through a 3-day mental health training. During that time, it helped them to recognize, even on the phone in conversations, not that they haven't been good at it in the past, but this gave them some new skills, even in a conversation, to kind of pick up on the signals of what's not being said as well as what is being said. So if we're talking to someone and we ask if they have a weapon, and while we're talking to them, we may be looking at the history on their address. Their address may show us that in the past, they've tried to harm themselves with a knife. We would add that information in there and more than likely send a police officer rather than BCR for safety reasons. So it is all in the line of questioning that we do along the way. If someone calls in and threatens to harm themselves, I know it sounds kind of harsh, but we directly ask them what method they're going to use to harm themselves. And you'd be surprised how often we get an honest answer.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help a little bit more?
Kind of. But my question may be a little more complicated.
We'll talk.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair Koski.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Hodney, for being here. I appreciate it, and it's been very enlightening. Oh, sorry, we have one more question here.
All good. Thank you, Chair Koski. Director, thank you very much for coming in and showing us a little bit more about the work that you do. I know I've had a chance to come and spend some time in the basement with your team and learn a little more about the work that you do. I'm wondering, like the piece around looking up, what types of calls might have been made from that address before caught my attention. We live in a majority renter city, and then there are portions of our city that have just a far higher density of renters, and then as a result, like a lot of turnover. So how does that factor in when you're taking a call and you're trying to determine the scenarios that could play out at that call, whether it's EMS coming, fire, 911, BCR, MPD, BCR, that you want it to be as safe as possible for the staff that are going to be responding, and then make sure that they're properly equipped to keep themselves and other first responders safe. So I'm trying to understand then, like the ways in which you look up the types of factors that might make a situation unsafe, the presence of weapons or a history of violence in that specific address. So how does that play in with factoring in for that, for communities where there is higher turnover at specific addresses?
So let me make sure I'm understanding the question correctly. You're wondering if we make decisions based on the area of the city that someone is responding?
A little bit, but more than that, it's say where there's a call that's coming from an apartment building, right? There's 60 units in it, but though there's a lot of turnover because every year some amount of those people don't renew their leases. Mm-hmm. You get a call from one of the units in that apartment building. How are you determining what type of, and you're trying to figure out, are there weapons at this situation, determining whether we send in BCR or they need to be escorted by MPD, or whether MPD just needs to go in on their own. But the person who's living in that unit now is different from the person who was living there 6 months ago. So how does that factor in to
Okay, I understand what you're looking for now.
Yeah.
We teach our call takers to take every call that comes in as a new call. Even if we have history on it, even if we have information on it, to treat that caller like they are the first time calling. We might have talked to that person 5 times that day. And so by that point, we might be able to call them by name or talk to them, but their situation could change between that first call and that 5th call. So we make sure that when we talk to them, we get that same information from them. What's happening now? What's changed now? Are there weapons now? Is anybody else there with you? So our line of questioning goes along with what we can determine from that caller. We can only share as much as what's given to us. That's the problem with being on the phone and not being able to see anything. We have to be really trained at pulling that information out and extracting it from our callers to help them feel that we're sending them the safest response.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, not seeing any further questions from my colleagues. Thank you, Director Hodney, for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you to your team for all the hard work and dedication, too.
Thank you.
All right, so our third presentation is from the fire department. I've also allocated up to 45 minutes for this presentation and Q&A, and I see that they are just out in the hall, so we'll just give them a moment to kind of ping them and let them know we're ready for them here. All right, I will invite Chief Brian Tyner to introduce their presentation for our fire department. Welcome.
Thank you, and good morning all. So this is our budget overview for 2023 and 2024 of the mayor's recommended budget. And is somebody, or am I? Okay. All right, away we go. So our department overview, I thought the best way to start would be by just giving our mission statement, which I think describes it pretty well. And our mission statement is that employees of the Minneapolis Fire Department are thoroughly trained and ready to protect lives, property, and the environment by rapidly responding to emergencies and hazardous situations. We are committed to prevention by proactively working with the community to reduce the risk to life, property, and the environment. This is our org chart. I won't spend too much time on that, but as you can see, we are organized. This is our program and staffing summary. The thing I would like to point out here is that most of our budgetary money goes into our area of fire suppression, EMS and emergency and technical rescue. Of course, that's our most visible and most well-known program. Our other two programs are community risk reduction and outreach and training and recruitment. And these numbers are spread out amongst all of the employees. So it's not just that, this amount of money goes towards this one thing. All of our employees do a little bit of all of this throughout the year. As you can also see, our FTEs for 2022 are 427. That includes 419 sworn personnel and 8 civilian personnel, and that will not change according to this biannual budget. So these are our program updates. Our first area I want to talk about is fire suppression, EMS, and technical rescue. The goals of this program are to respond effectively to all emergencies and all hazards. We're an all hazards fire department, which means if there isn't a department or a entity in place to respond to a specific emergency, they're going to send the fire department, and we prepare for all of those things. Our goal is to meet the national response standards contained in the National Fire Protection Association 1710 standard, and ensure that the most appropriate and efficient response of rigs, equipment, and personnel are responding to each incident type. The race equity impacts for this program are neutral. We respond to every part of the city in the same way, and we provide the same level of service no matter who it is we're responding to. That NFPA standard that I mentioned earlier, 1710, requires that the first rig to arrive on the scene is to arrive in 5 minutes or less at least 90% of the time. I will tell you right now that the MFD has never met that. Most fire departments across the nation have never met that. It's a standard that was put in place in 2001, and it includes the time from the moment that the 911 call taker picks up the phone to the moment the MFD arrives. And if you break it down, it actually comes out to be more than 5 minutes, but it is what it is. The MFD was only able to meet this standard 71% of the time in 2021. We did a little bit better in 2020, but it's still a significant decline in our historical average, which was closer to 80%. However, the good news, if there is any, is that our average response time for all of these runs, 100% of them, is actually 5:18. So while we're not getting there under 90% of the time, we're not far off either. The other part of that NFPA standard is that it requires 14 firefighters to arrive at the scene of a structure fire or a building fire in 9 minutes, 20 seconds or less. And so in 2021, we were only able to meet this standard 67% of the time. In order to improve that, we would probably have to put more people on the rig so that we're counting more people as each rig arrived. We did accomplish some things, though, here in 2021. We were awarded a 3-year, $1.2 million grant from the Department of Justice for the Safe Station program. It's a program that we're finalizing contracts on right now so that we can kick it off. And it's designed to provide people suffering from opioid addictions a safe place to be connected to treatment and counseling. And that is in partnership with Twin Cities Recovery Project and a number of other entities. We've also applied for a 3-year, $4.5 million FEMA SAFER grant, and that grant would allow the department to add 15 firefighters to that 419 at no cost to the city for those 3 years. So if we are successful, and we're actually awaiting notification on that now, if we actually receive the grant, that would cover those 15 firefighters for 23, 24, and 25. And then we'd be asking the city to pick that up in 26. So this graph shows our run totals. And if you look, you can see that our run totals, we've had a couple of years where it went down a little bit, I think because of COVID, and I'm not sure what 2018, why it went down a little bit, but those runs have been steadily climbing over the years, and they're primarily driven by the EMS runs, the emergency medical service runs that we respond to. If you look at the graph, the blue is our sum total of our total calls to include everything we do, and the orange is the EMS calls. So for 2021, the EMS calls resulted in about 2/3 or 66% of our runs, and normally they end up between that 66 and 70% of our run totals. These graphs just talk about the NFPA standards that we talked about. 2017, we were close to 80%, about 79, and since then it's kind of been, falling off. So I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. I don't know that we can pinpoint it to one specific reason. If you do the breakdown compared to NFPA standards, our time is pretty good. The NFPA standard allows 1 minute for the call taking and dispatch, and right now 911 averages is about 53 seconds, so they're above that. Turnout time, it allows for a 60-second turnout time for EMS calls and an average of 80 seconds for fire responses, and we're in that area. And then it allows 4 minutes for travel time, and we're actually in that. But if you put those all together, that actually comes up to over 6 minutes, which I think explains why most departments can't meet the 5 minutes or less. We only have one change item on the docket today, and that is for an increase for technology and to improve our software. We're asking for $245,000 in one-time funding, as well as $200,000 in ongoing funding. It would have no impact to our FTEs, and the technology, the software that we are targeting is called ImageTrend, and it would replace the functions of two of our current outdated and unsupported softwares, one being Firehouse, which we use to do our NIFRS reporting, National Fire Incident Reporting System reporting, and Workforce Director, which we use to do our scheduling and keep our firefighters in line and working and how they get paid. ImageTrend would bring us in alignment with the Minnesota State Fire Marshal's NIFRS reporting system, and that they also use ImageTrend, and maintain our state mandating reporting requirement ultimately to FEMA in the U.S. Fire Administration. It would also cover a number of other functions that we currently are not able to do. Our second program area is training and recruitment. The function of the training and recruitment program is to ensure that our firefighters are thoroughly trained, capable leaders, and supervisors through the pursuit of excellence and high professional standards. We accomplish this by providing skills training, instilling a value of lifelong learning and the development of leadership traits, ensuring a focus on wellness, health, and safety. Some of the accomplishments in this program, and we've been focusing on this quite a bit this year, we began by the process of redeveloping and expanding the MFD's Employee Assistance Program to include emotional trauma and mental health services. That met the mayor's goal of public safety and public health, and also the SREAP goal of public safety. To do that, we created a formal peer support program in partnership with MenFire, which is a state agency that specializes in firefighter health for emotional trauma, cancer, suicide, and things like that. We began the process of staffing recovery. We didn't experience a mass exodus like the police did, but because we were not able to hire for 2 years due to COVID, we kind of got off schedule, so to speak. So we got way down in our staffing. But we did just graduate a class of 23 in August, and they are now working on the rigs and contributing to the city. And we just started a class of 25, which has already shrunk down to 23 in September, and they will graduate in February. But that still should leave us in good shape once they graduate, once our projected retirements come in. We've also launched a new program called the MFD Leadership Program. It's a leadership curriculum. It meets the mayoral goal of public safety and the SREAP goal of public safety, and it's designed to teach our upcoming leaders leadership theory and leadership traits that are really more focused on public safety and not just kind of the garden variety university type stuff you would get. Our first cohort just completed yesterday, and that was of our fire captains. It was designed for our fire captains. We have a second cohort designed for chief officers that will begin next month. That program is completely voluntary. We're not making anybody go through it. So, I was very happy to see that we ended up getting a full class for that first cohort, and I hope to see a full class for this second cohort. Also, we have to make sure that 100%, each and every one of our firefighters have the 72 hours over 3 years of mandatory fire training necessary to maintain the Minnesota State firefighter license, and we're way above that, so that is not an issue. And that 100% of our firefighters have the 80 hours of mandatory emergency medical technician training over 2 years necessary to maintain their state EMT certification, and we're way above that either. We have a great system in place for that. And our last program area is community risk reduction and outreach. The function of this program is to reduce preventable fires, fire-related injuries and deaths. The program is tasked with reaching out to Minneapolis residents and businesses with fire safety and prevention information. And I've also kind of added recruitment. I've got one of these staff captains leading our recruitment this year too. The programs that we offer through Community Risk Reduction and Outreach Program include Youth Fire Setter Outreach or Intervention Program. It's a program where if we come across a minor who is setting fires or engaging in arson, we're able to intervene before they get into the system and hopefully get them turned around. School age outreach and education, adult and aging outreach and education, aging adult outreach and education, differently abled outreach, immigrant and non-speaking English outreach and education, and finally, we have a smoke and carbon monoxide alarm distribution program. We do that in partnership with Red Cross most years, but this year we were also awarded a $5,000 fire education grant from the Hartford Insurance Company Financial Services Group, which we use to purchase and install smoke and carbon monoxide detectors for the hearing impaired. So that's important because, oftentimes they won't hear the normal alarm that we use. So it uses a light system, a flashing light system, and I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but anyway, it uses other means to alert them that there may be a fire. Strobe lights, that's the word I'm looking for. So for this just shows what our distribution has been over the last couple of years. As you can see, it's been pretty constant, except for in 2021 where we got the extra funds through that grant, and so we were able to increase our smoke alarm, and we reduced the CO alarm just a bit in order to maximize the smoke alarm distribution. I think that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Chief Tyner. We do have a few questions in queue. We have Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, thank you for the presentation. I have a question and a comment. The question is, how many of your runs are due to the opioid crisis? Do you have an idea?
I don't have an exact number on that. I would say it's a significant percentage, though. Traditionally, most of our runs have been due to smoking and smoking-related illnesses, but definitely the opioid-related runs are on the rise.
To take a stab, would you say 20%, 25%?
I don't want to take a stab. It would be like literally just a guess. So
Okay, thank you. And the second comment, in fact, I see Ms. Rucker here. I really appreciate getting the information so quickly, the report. So I just want to compliment and a note of gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We also have Councilmember Vita.
Thank you, Chair Koski. Thank you, Chief, and thank you to staff who are here with you. Just a couple quick questions. What positions do civilians hold in your department?
So our finance director, Luke Scardelli, is one. We have some office support personnel. We also have what we call fire stores. They are the people that maintain our equipment, and it's kind of like a quartermaster if you were in the Army, and hand out our equipment. So those are the three biggest areas, would be finance, office support, and fire stores.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is about recruitment. You say you just had the class that graduated in August, and you have another one that's coming in February, and that you really haven't seen like a bunch of firefighters leaving after, during the pandemic or when others have taken a drop. Do you factor your recruiting in for retirement? Like knowing like next year 25 people are going to retire, so we need to start recruiting now.
We do. Well, first of all, I've kind of changed our recruiting strategy to, I like to recruit all year round, all the time. But we start a new civil service list every 2 years. And next year, 23, will be when our current civil service list expires. So we have to start the process of putting together a new civil service list, and they are good for 2 years each. But we keep track of our retirements and things, so we always have a lot more people eligible to retire than actually retire. As a matter of fact, I will reach retirement age here in a week and a half. But
Don't go.
but retirement age for us is 55, and you know, I'm not going anywhere. So, but our retirements are pretty steady. You know, as you say, we're pretty much on 20 to 25 people a year we can count on as going to be retiring for one reason or another. And so we actually, through our recruitment and process, we end up getting way more applications than we can ever use. And that's even with our interest in applications declining. When I originally applied for this job, usually we would get about 2,500 applications, you know, every 2 years. And that has began to decline over the last few cycles. Last year was the first time we got less than 1,000. We actually got 709 to be exact applications, but considering I can only hire probably 50, and I'm gonna actually get probably 75 job offers I'll make over these 2 years, which is a lot. That's still a lot of people, way more than we could ever use. So after we went through the whole testing process for those 709, we still ended up with a list of about 230 qualified applicants. And it's a really good list. It's a really diverse list. I've been really proud of my classes, and they've performed well. But luckily, we are not experiencing some of the challenges that other departments are experiencing as far as finding good qualified candidates. And the reason for that is because 90% of the fire service is volunteer on call. And so there's very few career fire departments where you can come and actually make a career in firefighting, around the country. And so these jobs seem to be pretty highly sought out.
Thank you for those. I'm just looking to see if any of my colleagues have any other questions. I just had one question. I was wondering if we could go back to the page around the NFPA requirements and goals. I think you might have said you aren't really sure what the barriers are, but I just wondering if I could get some clarity on, what do you then do to work to try to reduce?
Yeah, so there's, some obvious answers that you probably can't do. So, you could reconfigure your fire stations so that they're in better positions, but, that's not a reality. You can add more fire rigs, but that's not financially a reality right now either. I do plan on starting a pilot program. I call it the Engine 10 pilot program. I'm going to add another rig in the downtown corridor, which is our busiest corridor by far. Engine 6 actually was found to be the 9th busiest engine in the whole entire nation. So they're getting plenty of work down there to try to kind of spread that workload out. But I don't have money to just staff it every day, so I'll have to staff it when we have enough people to staff it. In other words, I'm not going to use overtime to staff it. But I do want to do that pilot program to get some numbers and data to see if that my theory is actually supported, that is needed. So that's something that I'm planning to do here next year, and actually probably in the next month to get that going. But, we've seen a lot of changes and a lot of things that affect these numbers. It seems like we were without a freeway system for about 2 years as it, went under construction, 94 and 35. That makes a big difference. When Bridges is out, that makes a big difference. Even the contracting of our streets and lanes, to add in bike lanes, that makes a difference because people aren't able to pull over like they normally could. So there's a lot of things that factor into that. But I think the biggest thing is, my personal opinion is that the standard is probably not realistic. And some of the research that I've read supports that.
Thank you. That's very helpful. All right. Well, I think we are done with asking questions for Chief Tyner. I don't see any others, so thank you so much for being here. We appreciate all that you do and for your team that's here as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, our final presentation today is from the Office of Emergency Management. We also have up to 45 minutes. I'll invite Director Barrett Lane to give that presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Council members, pleased to be here this morning. My name is Barrett Lane. I am the Director of the Office of Emergency Management, and I'm here to brief you on the Mayor's proposed budget for next year and the following year, now under our two-year planning process here. Before I get started, I want to introduce Kate McKay. Kate has joined us as the Assistant Director for Finance and Administration, a new employee with us and the first budget cycle, so she will be our budget point of contact going forward. And before I do start, I also want to thank Jane and all the other finance team here for all of their support, not just during the budget process, but all year round, so we really appreciate their help. And so, as you know, the Office of Emergency Management is in the resilience business. Our vision is to have a resilient Minneapolis enterprise serving a resilient Minneapolis community. And we do that by implementing this mission statement. We work in 5 main mission areas. Fortunately, you guys you all have just gone through training, so you've heard quite a bit of this, but we work in the areas of prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. Those are the 5 main mission areas, and the capabilities or business lines we'll talk about in just a second are designed to serve those and accomplish those 5 things. The other thing that this mission statement reminds us of is that we are part of a national network. We both have the ability to receive resources and assistance from other states and the federal government, but we are also in the process of being able to provide that assistance to those that need it through the Emergency Management Assistance Compact and other mechanisms. The team that gets all this work done and that has my complete confidence is blocked out below there. We are down 1 FTE here based on budget cuts from 2020, but we are carrying on with the team that you see outlined here. Basically, as I've mentioned in the past, OEM is structured to meet our national standards and best practices, including the National Incident Management System and NFPA 1600. The Chief was just talking about NFPA standards. There is an NFPA standard that applies to emergency management and business continuity programs, and our program is designed specifically to meet that standard. So the structure and the capabilities that we're fielding here are related directly to that mandate. Here's our program and staffing summary. The budget is about $1.9 million on an ongoing basis here. We have no change items to present today, so this really is just the current service level being moved forward in appropriate dollars, recognizing cost of living increases and other inflation-related drivers, if you will. So you will note that 2020 was a big bump. That was all one-time expenditures associated with pandemic response, primarily purchasing of backfill personal protective equipment, masks, and N95 respirators that we took out of our cash. If you'll recall, we went into the pandemic, unlike most organizations, with really a sufficient amount of respiratory protection for our team and enough to share with the community. This represents in that space that reimbursement or that replenishment of that cash so that we can continue to maintain that capacity out into the future. So as you see below, 9.5 FTEs, that's following the drop in 2020 of that one cut. Here's the 2023 budget exact number. And you remember this, last year we piloted this dashboard. So these are a list of the various capabilities we would perhaps even refer to as business lines that we use to accomplish those 5 main mission areas. We've been working on outcome measurement, performance measurement since 2019. And in between here, we've partnered with the coordinator's office and the team that's been developing those enterprise level key performance indicators to develop sort of this dashboard of where we're at system-wide. I'd like to think of this as being sort of the department's vital signs. It's like anything else. You can look at any of these programs at an almost infinite level of detail, but this is really, we've tried to select in partnership with the coordinator's office indicators that give you a sense of whether the system as a whole is functioning as a meets expectations standard. Now, I would just want to emphasize, this doesn't mean it's optimized. It doesn't mean it's perfect. It means that it's currently meeting expectations based on the standard that we have and the mission that we've been given up to this point in time. That may well change as in conversation with Dr. Alexander, we may see some change in mission space, some additional emphasis here within these capabilities as far as responsibility to the enterprise as a whole. But that's something that we are going to have to continue to work out with him as we implement his vision for preparedness for both the Office of Community Safety as well as the enterprise as a whole. We check two things every year. We check to see whether or not the plans and the procedures we have in place meet standards. So there's a check mark there under plan. So yes, all of these things are built out based on the standards that we have. And then we check to see if whether, based on those plans and procedures, they actually do what they're supposed to do. We have two kinds of capabilities that we feel. There are some things on this list that we do every day, so we can collect a fair amount of data on that. We have a good data stream in the sense of, is this thing, whatever it is, working? The watch officer is the 24/7 entry point into OEM services for incident command and for the enterprise generally. That runs all the time, so we can measure whether that's working or not. Likewise, the outdoor warning siren system is tested on an ongoing basis, so we're able to measure that in terms of system uptime, if you will. The details of this are actually in the budget book. We submitted them as part of the budget book this year. If you want to look at any of those particular measurements, they're in there, and the data that was current as of the time that we submitted to the mayor, which would have been back in May. But these check marks represent the current sort of top level, is it working or is it not working type of measurement. So those data are in there. We can dig into that a little deeper if you wish, but the ones I wanted to highlight here particularly is continuity of operations. We'll talk about this a little bit. We have 21 different departments. They all have continuity plans. They all are tested, reviewed, trained, exercised, and certified annually. So that's the metric that we use in that space. And I'll just skip ahead a slide here a little bit. We had the IT technology outage last month. And those COOP plans were key to a good recovery in that space. We did a quick survey and found that 100% of the people responding to this survey thought that yes, continuity planning increased their ability to respond to that IT incident. Our performance measurement here is really part of a continuous improvement process. So some of these things like the Emergency Operations Center or perhaps the damage assessment capability are things that unless we have an incident or a major disaster, we're not going to do. So we test and exercise those annually. For instance, with the Emergency Operations Center, we make sure that on a quarterly basis we can actually stand up the physical EOC. We time that, and we have time metrics associated with getting that done. And then we either do a tabletop exercise or a functional exercise. A tabletop is a discussion-based exercise. A functional exercise is more of an activity-based exercise where people are actually sitting in seats and doing stuff. So we alternate every other year to collect data from that to help gauge performance. Most of that then gets plowed back into our continuous improvement process. Right now, we're starting that process of setting our 2023 work plan, and a big feed into that 2023 work plan and what we need to accomplish next year comes from the lessons learned from the various exercises. The other one I wanted to just highlight here is the resource management, the cash program. This is something that we have to maintain an inventory for. We maintain a cache of supplies not only for respiratory personal protective equipment, that is N95 masks primarily, but also surgical masks at this point. But we also have a special needs mobility cache that came out of lessons learned following an evacuation of a nursing home in 2009. Found that there was not enough hardware to move an entire nursing home all at once. So we now have SCADs, lifts, quad canes, wheelchairs available. We have a small animal sheltering cache. We can augment a small animal operation up to 500 dogs and cats in modules of 100. So we have cots and blankets. We have literally hundreds of cots and blankets potted up that are available to supplement Red Cross operations. The reason I mention this, again, this is part of these were funded by national dollars, and these are nationally available. we maintain this in stewardship, not only for our community, but for the nation as a whole. Two notes on this. Again, in general, you'll see that these systems have tested out as being meets expectations. The damage assessment test we've delayed. The commissioner has asked us to focus very strongly on making sure that in partnership with the police department, we are working on and having a functional plan for civil unrest response. That's something that was part of the emergency operations plan that you approved earlier this year. We are now operationalizing, if that's a real word, that with the police department. Right now, we're going to repurpose that drill to do a test of that capability before the end of the year. So I just wanted to assure you that we are working on that. Very high priority for the commissioner, very high priority for me. But that damage assessment test will probably not happen in Q4. We'll probably bump that into Q1, but we will test that and make sure it works. You may recall that damage assessment capability was deployed following the 2020 riots. We did a full citywide damage assessment plus a smaller one, and that's what resulted ultimately in the application to FEMA for assistance. And when that was denied, it resulted in an application to the Fed or to the state, which is why we have over $14 million available to help recover. So this damage assessment is key if we want to make sure that we can tap into federal or state resources. So this is a key component of our program. I'll just pause on that. Employee disaster assistance, this was suspended due to personnel changeover. This is something that we're going to field next year. In fact, Assistant Director McKay will be taking that over and getting that squared away next year. This is a function by which we can assess and make sure that our employees are accounted for after the disaster. So if some tornado comes through or something else happens, we want to make sure that we can account for our employees. Just a matter of business continuity, if not just simple relationships, but also make sure that they get connected appropriately to resources for their own personal and family recovery. So that's the function that is an employee disaster assistance. That's different than the EAP that we have through Optum or whatever our contractor is at this point in time. But that'll come online next year. We'll test that, and then you'll see the results of that test in this presentation next year. So just some quick accomplishments here, and then I will wrap up and turn it over to you for questions. As you just saw, the baseline capabilities that we field per standard at expectations. Again, are they perfect? No. Can they be improved? Absolutely. That's part of our commitment to that continuous improvement. We did revise the emergency operations plan. This is a big deal. This is a quadrennial effort that resets that. And key in that, of course, is the civil unrest annex, as well as language in there that implements changes that will support race equity, support of the Emergency Operations Center when we stand that up. So there's specifically a position in there to advise EOC staff on those issues so that we can make sure that our values are represented in our operations. And the council president and I have talked about this in the past. So we really appreciate the race equity folks in their partnership on that. So that, I think, is a key component in the plan, and we're working out, again, the operational details of that. We've completed the executive annual council training and for the executive team as well as for you. One of the findings in the after action report for 2020 is that we need to do refresher training. So you can plan on Q2, probably around Severe Weather and Awareness Week. We will do not a full day, but we will do some refresher training for you all as well as the staff, the executive staff, just to make sure that those skill sets remain fresh. The other thing we'll be doing is, since we've had a number of folks join us at the executive team level, we'll make sure that those folks are brought up to speed so that they have the same training background that the rest of the team has. I talked about the COOP training exercises. This has really been a super successful program, and I really want to call out the work of Eric Gustafson and our team for leading that. We did see that really pay off in the technology incident that we had a few weeks ago. So all the people in all the departments that have worked on this, I really appreciate that. I think that it worked very, very well. That's one of the two key responses I just wanted to highlight. We maintain 24/7 watch. We probably twice, 3 times a month, we see an incident out there that we go to what we call situation monitoring. We're paying some attention to, but not taking any specific direction on. But we did have an incident, or actually a set of incidents having to do with a hazardous material in the sanitary sewers up and around the University of Minnesota. And I just want to call this one out because I really, and I don't know if the chief is still around, but I really appreciate the partnership of the fire department, because their partnership and their connection with us early on in that, and their level of information sharing, is what allowed us to activate our plans and capabilities in a way that you would expect them to be activated. So we knew what was going on. We were able to share that information with you all. We were able to share that information with the Joint Information Center through communications, and we were able to provide that interagency support and coordination that people expect us to do. So we're working with the Met Council, with the University of Minnesota, with state PCA, with the State Fire Marshal's Office, with the City of St. Paul, and a number of agencies within our own agency. We were able to take that coordination mission off of the lap of the incident commander and handle that for the incident commander. That's what we're designed to do. And it was just really, again, hats off to them and my team for getting that done. It's nice to see that when the system is used, it works. I think it just is very validating for us as a team. I did again want to highlight the civil unrest planning and exercising with all our partners within the Office of Community Safety. As I mentioned before, this is a top priority for the commissioner. It's a top priority for me. I've sat down and had very, very productive conversations with Interim Chief Huffman. We've really got a number of things sorted out here, and I think we're well on our way toward having a better performing plan here for the future. So again, I think that's quite hopeful and certainly time. The last thing I want to just mention is, we've got this ongoing effort to respond to the various elements of that after action report from 2020. And OEM is continuing to lead that effort. I reached out to the council vice president. We owe you a update on that for Q4, I guess it would be this year. So we'll be scheduling that and continue on that quarterly reporting basis. The leadership of that has been transferred from the city coordinator, so the overall executive sponsor, if you will, has been transferred from the city coordinator to Dr. Alexander. Most of the people involved in this workout are sitting around that table. Not that we're going to lose connection with our partners in health or communications or public works, but the leadership has been transferred. So between Dr. Alexander and I, we will continue to drive that project forward. So we will come back with a more comprehensive report on that within the next 60 days, whenever we can get that on the schedule. There are, of course, a ton of things on your schedule between now and the end of the year, but we will fit that in there when it works for you. I did want to note that with this overall NIMS reset, so this is the process by which we're going to go through and retrain, both at the incident command level, coordination level, everyone, and exercise each component and put all those pieces together in a capstone exercise. That is well underway. We've gotten responses back in part for the RFP to get the training and exercising on board. We should have some information back on that within the next couple weeks, but that's making good progress. And we will be submitting the application to the Federal Emergency Management Agency for that capstone exercise that would happen in late 2024. That will be, we're drafting that currently, and we'll get that in. That's something that goes out under the mayor's signature. But he's very committed to making sure that we have the 60 or so people that are going to have to go out there. Remember, the objective of this is to be able to demonstrate on that national stage that we've learned our lessons from 2020 and that we can operate these systems in a way that meets standards and meets public expectations. So that is the course we're on, and I do appreciate the support of all of the partners within the Office of Community Safety and outside it to get that work done. And that, Madam Chair, council members, is my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Lane. We will now, move to our Q&A section. I just want to remind my colleagues to focus questions on this presentation and questions related to the budget. So I have Vice President Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for that reminder. I know that I I was going to also highlight, Director Lane did it, how we move forward from the after action review. And as you refer to the NIMS reset, are there any budget specific things that would help us do that work better from an after action report and NIMS reset perspective? I know that you've heard from, I'd say largely all members of our city council, that this is especially important to us, and we promise to be invested in that from here forward, meaning ourselves, our time, our willingness to work and create muscle memory in new ways too. And I know that it will take time from lots of different parts of the enterprise. So is there any specific spend within your department on that? And just for my colleagues to know, we are looking to have an update on this at Committee of the Whole in either of the November dates, November 1st or 15th. And I'm sorry I didn't actually get back to you about that yet, but that's when we're looking to have it, and we'll schedule it with you.
Yeah, very good. Madam Chair, Council Member. So as far as change items in this budget, we're not bringing forward any change items associated with the budget. So we went through that process with the mayor back in May or whenever it was that we started that. This has been a moving target since then. We did send out an RFP for both the training element of this NIMS reset as well as the exercising element, and that's pretty extensive as far as what we're asking people to do. I don't have final numbers on any of that yet, but we are working with finance to find money in order to make that happen. Now, it's possible that as we go forward, we're going to be able to find federal partners or other partners to provide some of this training or exercise support, but we want to make sure this happens and it happens in a timely fashion. So we're sort of working assumption that let's figure out what this would cost and then start saving money from there. So I would say within the next few weeks here, we will be working with finance to figure out what that's going to happen, and if there's council action associated with that, which probably I assume there would be, we will have to bring that back as a separate piece. But part of this is just a timing issue. We didn't have the data to present to the mayor, so therefore it couldn't come forward as a change item. So you will be seeing, this is not going to be inexpensive. I think I've said that before, but it is going to be well worth it if we expect to deliver the results that folks expect us to deliver. So long way of saying more to come. But within our budget, no. I mean, at this point in time, from a staffing standpoint, other than being down one FTE, that's something that we're going to work out with the commissioner's office. I think we'll find a way of working back and forth that's going to cover that work. So I think even that is probably squared away on the non-budget basis. If we're talking about other elements of this, I think the other thing I would see on the horizon, and again, not for right now, is it's fairly plain the police department needs to have a technology-supported command post, and it's fairly plain that it needs to be somewhere other than in our EOC. So, this is the two people trying to wear one pair of shoe problem. It's something that we've discussed within the office, and I think eventually we're going to have to look at the capital implications of supporting what they need. But for right now, we've been able to come up with an agreement to sort of split the space. Does everybody have exactly what they want? No. But now we're all going to be able to share the space that we have. We'll get by for the meantime. So I would put a marker down for conversations around that at some point in time here. So that would be the only other thing I can think of directly coming out of the AAR, at least from an OEM standpoint.
Thank you, and I know that you are the facilitator of a lot of moving pieces of this work, and a lot of that work is quite technical in nature, so thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you. I am not seeing any other questions from my colleagues, so thank you so much, Director Lane, for being here, and Assistant Director McKay. Nice to meet you and welcome. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
for your
I appreciate your
presentation.
time.
Seeing no further discussion, at this point, I'll direct the clerk to file these presentations. Thank you to my colleagues for having three committee meetings with me this week. I'll note that our next one, you're not done yet, is next Tuesday, September 20th, also at 10 a.m. And that day, we are going to hear from the police department, our neighborhood safety team, and also the mayor's office. So with that, I've concluded all business. to come before the committee today, and without objection, we'll stand to adjourn. Thank you.